I've never seen anyone not be able to progress if they made the task small enough. But, that can be pretty humiliating. Now, the upside is that once you take that first step, you've looked the beast in the face, and you'll start progressing, not linearly, but exponentially in speed.
You said that a harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control. How should people become more dangerous?
Becoming more articulate is definitely, I would say, that's the primary array of weapons. So, physical prowess is something, and it's not nothing, that physical confidence that comes along with that as well. But the same thing replicated at the level of the ability to communicate and to think, and that's a way broader field of battle and opportunity. So this is one thing that isn't taught well, especially to boys. It's more important to teach it to boys, I would say, because they're more skeptical of the educational enterprise in general, generally speaking, partly because they're less obedient, partly because they're less agreeable. That's particularly true for disagreeable boys. And agreeable boys get higher grades, independent of their IQ and their academic achievement, because they're easier to deal with. So, what do you tell disagreeable boys? There's nothing that makes you more formidable than verbal competence, than being able to articulate, be able to think, to marshal your arguments, right? It's a battlefield metaphor. Get everything in order. Get all your information straight, to marshal your forces. And so, that's part of the reason that rap artists are so popular, especially among disaffected young men, black and white alike, because they're unbelievably articulate. Right? They have this incredible verbal prowess. It's unbelievably attractive, and it's associated with genuine artistic and redemptive activity, often focusing on something that's approximately the voice of the underclass, let's say, but a powerful voice, right? And it's interesting to see how many young white guys identify with that. There seems to be something like a law of nature that's described by this statistical model called the Pareto distribution. And it basically suggests that in any creative domain, there's going to be a small number of people will do almost all of the output. But it doesn't just apply to human beings. It applies to the heights of trees in the Amazon rainforest. It applies to the size of cities, and it applies to the mass of stars, and it's something like, the more you have, the more you get. It's something like, you can imagine how that would work with a star. As it gets bigger and bigger and its gravitational mass increases, it's going to attract more and more matter. And then as a city grows, more and more people are excited to move there because of all the opportunities, and so some cities start to grow tremendously and others don't. But this phenomena where a small number of people end up controlling a tremendous proportion of the resource is not only limited to money, and it doesn't only occur in capitalist societies. It occurs everywhere. It's like a natural law. So you see the same thing with number of points scored by a spectacular sports figure. There's always a tiny proportion of people who are way ahead on the curve, or people who make records, or people who sell paintings, or people who compose music, or people who sell music online. It's all the same. It's the 1% gets 80%. Since 1960, we've insisted that the purpose of your life is a kind of hedonistic happiness, that you have rights, which includes the rights to that hedonistic happiness. The capitalist marketers certainly capitalize on that, just as much as the, governmental tyrants. Rights, what I want right now. That idea of infantile consumption, fundamentally. Well, you have rights for a particular reason, and the reason you have rights is so that you can shoulder your responsibilities. And you might say, well, I don't want to shoulder my responsibilities, but that's where all the meaning in your life is. And so when I tell people this, the audiences always go dead silent. It's like, the adventure in your life will be found in responsibility. No one ever hears that. We haven't told young people that for like 60 years. you pick up the cross and shoulder it uphill because that's where all the meaning in your life will be derived from. It's in the difficulty. It's in the responsibility. It's not in the hedonistic self-gratification that, as I said, won't even satisfy a 2-year-old, not in the final analysis. All you do is, if people just get what they want all the time, immediately, it's not like that ennobles their character. Like, obviously not. Your character is made noble by sacrifice, by the delay of gratification. That's all associated with maturity. Emotional orientation is, by definition, immature. Like a 2-year-old is run by emotion. Once you mature, you can even think of this technically. As you mature, the control over your perception and behavior moves from instinct-based subcortical structures that govern motivation and emotion, their instincts, to the cortex, which is context-dependent, future-oriented, and communitarian. So, my happiness isn't as important, let's say my moment-to-moment happiness isn't as important or as meaningful as the psychological and physiological health of my family. So you make sacrifices for that, and life is a sacrificial enterprise. Let's say you can have a meaningful life by adopting responsibility, but it's a heavy load. You got to be awake and alert and on your feet and moving towards something difficult. You have to have some self-control, and you have to sacrifice in the present so that the future is better. It's complex. You have to integrate a lot. And when you take on some responsibility, your life has meaning. You think, I want a meaningful life. It's like, maybe you do, if you're willing to take on the responsibility. What's the alternative? Well, to garner a lot of unearned sympathy for your victimization position, and to, at the same time, take down the people who are willing to take more responsibility than you. It's a nasty game. And I see it played out in the universities too. I think if you quadrupled the salaries of sociologists, that most political correctness would go away. I think they're jealous and envious because they see people who aren't any smarter than them doing way better out there in the capitalist world. And that drives their envy and their hatred, even though they're unbelievably privileged in their positions as, let's say, sociology professors or social work professors or people who are on the faculties of education, all disciplines that have become incredibly corrupt. You can tell a story where everyone's a victim because we all die, we all get sick, and things happen to us that are bitter and terrible. Betrayal, deceit, lies, like people hurt us on purpose, so it's not just the tragedy of life. It's malevolence as well. Everyone's a victim. You can tell that story. The problem is, if you tell that story and you start to act it out, you make all of that worse. That's the problem. And this is why partly I got attracted to Christian imagery, at least in part. Because there's an idea in Christianity that you should pick up your goddamn cross and walk up the hill. And that's dramatically, that's correct. That's the right answer. It's like, you've got a heavy load of suffering to bear, and a fair bit of it's going to be unjust. So what are you going to do about it? Accept it voluntarily, and try to transform as a consequence. That's the right answer.
I really believe that it's really difficult to undergo self-development if you don't have self-awareness. And I was really trying to understand from your writings how someone is to build their self-awareness. It's almost like the unknown unknown. If you don't have it, how do you build the thing?
Oh, I know a good exercise for that. It's like a prayer in some sense. In fact, I would say it's proper prayer. If you want to know something about yourself, sit on your bed one night and say to yourself, you got to mean this. You got to be desperate. This is no game, this. It's like, my life is not everything I want it to be, and perhaps it's not everything that I need it to be. And by need, I mean my life is so unbearable that the suffering that's attendant upon that is make me nihilistic, cynical, bitter, resentful, homicidal, genocidal, unable to have a good relationship, prone to punish people for their virtues because of my jealousy, driving the proclivity to see evil everywhere except within my own heart. These are problems, man. And you ask yourself, you sit on the bed and say, okay, man, I'm ready to learn something. What's one thing I'm doing wrong that I know I'm doing wrong, that I could fix, that I would fix? It's like, you meditate on that, you'll get an answer. And it won't be one you want.
but it'll be the necessary one.
The proper comparison group for you is you yesterday. You're the only control group that's appropriate to you, because you have a certain set of talents and possibilities and limitations and tragedies that are truly unique to you. And so you might be comparing yourself to someone else on some dimension, but it's not a reasonable comparison, because you don't know what talents they were blessed with, and you also don't know what opportunities they had that you didn't, etc. It's just not a reasonable comparison. It's a lot better to think about who you were and then to think, well, could you be somewhat better in some dimension? And the positive thing about that is the answer is almost always yes. Now, you can orient that transformation towards some stellar target, and that's a reasonable thing to do, but that doesn't exactly mean that you should compare yourself to that target. Aiming at something and comparing yourself to it are not exactly the same thing. Plus, your bloody comparison is also a delusion. You know, that's another thing that you have to understand, is that you look at the person you're jealous of, and really what you're doing is you're looking through a very narrow aperture at a very thin slice of their life. You're looking at the thin slice of their life that's turning out the best, but you're also looking at a thin slice of their life that's marketed to be the best, right? And you have no idea what the horror of that person's life might be in its totality. And you have no idea if the deal was, say you wanted to be Russell Brand. There's a good example. You wanted to be Russell Brand. You wanted to be as charismatic and as famous as he is. Well, your real wish is that you get to have everything Russell Brand has, but none of his problems. Well, come on. I mean, it's no wonder that a vision like that would make you despondent, because it's naive, it's resentful, it's jealous, it's bitter, and it's unreasonable. You have to take the good with the bad. You have to take the bad with the good. And people rarely think about that when they're thinking about, the famous people they think they'd like to be.
Do you think that there's a usefulness in having a nemesis to motivate you? Talking about some of the situations that you've been through, not particularly those ones exactly, but I try to avoid making enemies of people or groups or ideas or whatever.
Yes, don't make unnecessary enemies.
But there is an extra level of fire that gets lit underneath you when you're going up against someone, and I miss it sometimes. There's a price that you pay for peace.
Yeah, well, then you just have to look at yourself harder and find the nemesis, because it's there all the time, right? I mean, there's always parts of yourself that you can overcome. And so that's William James' moral equivalent to war, essentially. If you need something to grapple with, and you probably do, you can find that. You just look inside, you'll find something to grapple with. Inadequacy, weakness, susceptibility to temptation, narcissism, pride, envy, revenge, resentment, frustration, lack of faith, all of that'll keep you occupied if you really grapple with it. And yeah, I mean, that's an ancient theological question. What's up with the devil? Why does the possibility of evil exist? Why is there an eternal adversary? See that reflected in Cain and Abel, right? At the beginning of the Genesis stories, essentially. The first two human beings are good set against an adversary. And that's what opens history, that story. You think, well, why would God construct a reality where an adversary exists? And maybe it's because all things considered, a world with an adversary is a better world, just like a garden with a snake in it is a better garden. These things aren't easy to understand. No snake, no necessity to contend with snakes. Right, so why be awake at all? No adversary, no challenge. Why be challenged? Because maybe you're better for the challenge. And maybe that's the challenge, to see if you can be better for the challenge. One way to increase the probability that things will unfold for you properly is to not lie. Just stop lying. Period. Stop saying things you believe to be untrue. Stop doing things you know to be wrong. Just start with that. You'll get closer and closer to the truth, and the truth is the adventure of life. That's the advantage to the truth. You have the world on your side. But obviously, because if you're lying about things, you're opposing reality. Who are you?
Who are you to oppose reality? Good luck. This is another reason why you don't lie. Because if you lie and you practice lying, you pathologize your instincts. And then your intuitions lead you wrong. And so there's a sin that's laid out in the Gospels. It's the sin against the Holy Ghost. And it's unforgivable. And people have been debating for like 2,000 years about what this particular sin is. But it's something like the pathologization of the instincts that orient you. If you sacrifice your relationship to the truth, you warp your vision. And then you can't see. And then one day it'll be dark and there'll be sharp things in the fog in front of you. And you'll wander right into them because you've pathologized your own vision.
Yeah.
You don't want to lie because you program yourself falsely. And then you automatically see what isn't there. And then, of course, the world will slap you in the face continually. And you'll think, oh my God, the world's such a pathological place. When the truth of the matter is that no, you just keep running into things that you refuse to see. And then you think, well, the world's made of nothing but obstacles. It's like, well, you put the obstacles in your own path, and you did that by developing these complex, self-serving delusions, a story that you tell other people about who you are that isn't true. You're trying to lay out a map that bears no relationship to reality, and you keep wondering why you wander off the path and into a pit. It's like, well, how could it be otherwise? Telling the truth is definitely an adventure. And so if you want an adventure, that's a good one.
Seeking the truth or telling the truth?
Both.
Okay.
But seeking for sure, but also telling. What
do you mean by that? Telling the truth is an adventure?
Look. So, one of the things that you're counseled to do, let's say if you do a lot of media interviews, is to figure out what it is that you want to accomplish with the media interview.
Okay.
Right? So you have a goal. It's like, here's what I want to accomplish with this interview. And potentially there's some use in that. But another way of going about it is to just say what you think and see what happens. That's an adventure, because you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So look, there's this old idea that it's necessary to have faith in the truth. And so here's a way of thinking about that. Someone asks you a question and you might think, well, here's the outcome I want, and so here's how I'm going to answer that question. So that's one way of approaching it. But another way of approaching it is, you ask me a question, I'm going to think about the answer, and I'm just going to tell you what I think. And it doesn't matter what the outcome is, because I'm willing to see what the outcome will be, predicated on the idea that there isn't a better outcome than the one that truth produces. Even if it's harsh and terrible in the short term, and sometimes it is, it's like there isn't a better way of doing it. Now, you might say, well, how do you know that? And the answer is, well, I don't know that. That's why it's an article of faith, because I believe, and I believe this deeply, the being that you produce as a consequence of telling the truth is good, by definition.
But
even though it's harsh and often uncomfortable, because you get in trouble.
So do you think people are less happy today than they were 20, 30 years ago?
Yes.
But what do you think is the biggest cause of that? Do you think it's comparison? Do you feel like it's social
Universities, lies, really, lies. The academia is saturated with propagandists. We've let the resentful radicals in beginning in the 60s, and they've essentially taken over the universities. So is that helpful? No, not in the least. So it's hard to be a good university professor. It's hard to be a good researcher. And it took a long time for the institutions of higher education to be reliable transmitters of both tradition and the spirit of inquiry. It's easily disrupted, and it's disrupted now. I've seen large institutions fall apart because they make a fatal error. I think universities are making 7 fatal errors. Top-heavy administration that keeps growing. Okay. Increase in the number of part-time, untenured faculty members who have no administrative or academic power. Massively increasing. Insane increases in tuition combined with indentured servitude for students, right? You get a student loan, you can't declare bankruptcy. So that means that the burgeoning administration has learned how to pick the pockets of the young people's future earnings. They entice them into university and offer them extended adolescence with no responsibility, and the price they garner from them is to garnish their future earnings. Crooked game. Ethics committees, absolute catastrophe. The dominance of this weird, nonsensical alliance between the postmodern types and the neo-Marxist types, which makes no sense philosophically given the postmodernist stated what would you call it, skepticism for meta-narratives. Why the hell they've aligned themselves with the Marxists is beyond me, except that I think postmodernism is just a shell game for Marxism. That's another fatal error. The gerrymandering of the grade system. So I think I got 6 there. All of those, they're not good. They're fatal, I think, all of them. And so I think that, I don't know what's going to happen to the university system over the next 20 years, but I'm certainly not optimistic about it.
You say, imagine who you could be, and then aim single-mindedly at that. I encounter these young people who appear to know who they could be, or they've imagined who they could be, but for whatever reason, they seem to choose the certain misery of their current situation, the job that's sucking their soul out, or that relationship, over the uncertainty they'll encounter as they go on the adventure of their life. So what would I say to these young people who always say to me, Steve, I want to do this, but you can see them stifled by fear, because it's like...
Yeah, well, it's like, make a plan, man. So when you're doubtful, say you're trapped, you ask yourself, well, why am I trapped? And that's a hard question, right? Because some of it's your own inadequacy, a lot of it. And all of the part of it that you can deal with is your own inadequacy. So even if it's unfair, even if you're hemmed in for any number of reasons, inappropriate, like ethnically predicated oppression, let's say, or maybe you're in a workplace that really is sexist in some fundamental sense. Well, that's not good. It's not just, it's not fair, it's not meritorious, all of those things. Man, maybe you shouldn't be there. But what you can do to begin with is every bloody thing you possibly can do to put yourself in the most virtuous and powerful negotiating position possible. And you have to think like a snake in some sense to do that. You got to get the details right. You have to be prepared to bite, and you have to have your eyes on the prize, so to speak. And people aren't taught this sort of thing ever, really. They're not taught how to negotiate. They're not taught how to goal set. They're not taught how to conceptualize appropriate success in some broad sense. In some sense, that's what the humanities are supposed to teach people. This is what Jacob does. Jacob, in the Old Testament stories, he eventually becomes Israel, right? And so that's his name. And Israel means we who wrestle with God. Now, Jacob is a bad guy when the story starts. And he leaves his home and the perverse influence of his mother and his criminal betraying past behind. And he decides that he's going to aim up. And that night, he makes an altar and he makes a sacrifice. And that night he has a dream of a staircase that reaches up to heaven, which is now what he's walking up, right? And so he finds his purpose, he finds his adventure as a consequence of his decision to be better. Okay, so now you want to find your purpose. Okay, first thing you have to do, you have to review how wretched and miserable you actually are. And you have to face that. And then you have to think, I'd rather not have that. And it has to be true. And then you have to aim up. Now, you don't know what that means because, like, you're pretty scattered and dissolute, but at least you got the damn intent in mind. And then you have to be willing to make the sacrifices, right, along the way. Okay, then what happens? Well, then the pathway will reveal itself to you in increments. Calling? Is there something around here that I could fix, that I would fix? That's a great question. Is there something at hand that I could fix, that I would fix? It might be something low, because especially when you first get going, you're not good for anything. So you might have to start with something pretty trivial, but it doesn't matter because you start getting better. Is there something that bothers me, that's conscience, that I could set right in some small way? Well, that's there for everyone, right? In the midst of the most catastrophic mess, that pathway, you might even say, look, the more mess around you, the more unstructured possibility you have at hand. And it's true, you know, it's like, I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna about this. I know how difficult that is, but it is the case that the more mess at hand that you can see, the more opportunity that's there. Because, well, if you can see that it's a mess, then you can see the pathway to cleaning it up. Well, so do it. Do it. See what happens. A vision for your future is the structure that provides you with hope and that regulates your negative emotion. Because it specifies a goal,
Once a goal is specified, you feel positive emotion in relationship to the goal. And your anxiety is constrained because you have a direction. You're anxious when you have way too many directions. That's why you get anxious if your car breaks down. It's like, what do I do now? Too many pathways. You want the pathways through life collapsed to a single implementable dimension, one that goes uphill. And then when you walk uphill, so to speak, each step that you see yourself making is indexed by positive emotion, hope, enthusiasm, meaning. So you need a vision. I've never seen anyone not be able to progress if they made the task small enough. But, that can be pretty humiliating. Now, the upside is that once you take that first step, you've looked the beast in the face, and you'll start progressing, not linearly, but exponentially in speed. So what's cool is that it doesn't really matter how small that first step is, because it'll start doubling, and anything that doubles grows unbelievably quickly. And so that's a very useful thing to know too. And that's true when you're learning anything new. It's like you'll feel like an imposter, you'll feel like a fool because you are, and you'll think, I'll never get there, and the destination might look very distant, but if you take a sufficiently small first step and get the ball rolling, you can be cruising along at a pretty good rate, generally faster than you'll think.
What's going on in one's psychology there? Is it building evidence of your own capabilities and capacity?
Definitely. What seems to happen when you expose people to small but challenging tasks, it does two things. It makes them more skilled because now they're actually dealing with the problem. And so they're acquiring the new perceptions and the new behaviors that are mastery. So they're actually expanding their domain of conceptual structures and actions. That's both conception and skill. But at the same time, they're seeing themselves as the actors that can change the direction of their life. You can set yourself a goal that you can attain, and there's not going to be much glory in it to begin with. Because if you're not in very good shape, the goal that you could attain tomorrow isn't very glorious. But it's a hell of a lot better than nothing, and it beats the hell out of bitterness, and it's way better than blaming someone else. It's way less dangerous. And you could do it. And what's cool about it, there's a statement in the New Testament. It's called the Matthew Principle, and economists use it to describe how the economy in the world works. To those who have everything, more will be given. From those who have nothing, everything will be taken. It's like what's very pessimistic in some sense, because it means that as you start to fail, you fail more and more rapidly. But it also means that as you start to succeed, you succeed more and more rapidly. And so you take an incremental step, and well, now you can lift 55 pounds instead of 52.5 pounds. You think, well, what the hell is that? It's like, it's one step on a very long journey. And so it starts to compound on you. So a small step today puts you in a position to take a slightly bigger step the next day. And then that puts you in a position to take a slightly bigger step the next day. And you do that for 2 or 3 years, man, you're starting to stride.
Do you have advice for young people? In high school, you've given, a lot of people look up to you for advice, for strength, to search for themselves, to find themselves.
Take on some responsibility. Do something for other people. You're doing something for yourself while you're doing that, even if you don't know it, for sure, because you're a community across time. Find something to serve.
Somebody to help.
Someone to help.
To solve.
Find a job. Do your best with the customers. Don't be above your job. You're going to get an entry-level job when you're a kid. Well, what else would you want? You want to be the boss? What do you know? You don't know anything. You could be the boss of your job. You know, if you're working in a grocery store, or you're working in a convenience store, assuming you're not working for terrified tyrants, you can be nice to the customers. You can develop your social skills. You can learn how to handle a boss-employee relationship. You can be there 15 minutes early and leave 15 minutes late. Like, you can learn in an entry-level job, man. And I'll tell you, if you take an entry-level job and you learn, and it's a reasonably decent place, you will not be in an entry-level job for long. Because everyone who's competent is desperate for competent people. And if you go and show yourself as competent, there'll be a trial period, but if you go show yourself as competent, all sorts of doors you didn't even know were there will start opening like mad. I said in one of the chapters in my books is focused on putting your house in order. It's like, well, how do you start? Make your bed. You know, it actually took me quite a long time in my life before I made my bed regularly in the morning. Most of my life was in pretty good order, but that was one thing I didn't have in order. My clothes in my closet as well, all that's in order. Not all of it. I'm cleaning out some drawers right now, but look around and see what bugs you in your room. Just look. It's like, okay, I'm in my room. Do I like this room? No, it bugs me. Okay, why? Well, the paint's peeling there, and it's dusty there, and the carpet's dirty, and that corner's kind of ugly, and the light there isn't very good, and my clothes closet's a mess, so I don't even like to open it. Okay, that's a lot of problems. That sucks. That's a lot of opportunity. Pick something and fix it.
Something that bugs you.
Yeah, but not too much. So the rule is pick something you know would pick a problem. Pick a solution to it that you know would help, that you could do, that you would do. So you have to negotiate with yourself. It's like, well, I won't clean up this room. How do you know? I've been in here for 10 years and I've never cleaned it up. It's like, well, obviously that's too big a dragon for you. Would you clean one drawer? Find out. And so imagine now you want to be happy when you open that drawer. You think, well, that's stupid. It's like, is it? Maybe it's your sock drawer, which I cleaned up in my room the other day, by the way. You're gonna open that every morning. So that's like 30 seconds of your life every day.